continue creating spaces for Black voices to be centered and elevated. And we're going to do exactly that. Our team is working as I speak on this, and whether it takes the form of town halls or community gatherings or something else, we're going to continue creating that space until we have lasting institutional reform and change in systems all across government. More to come soon on that point. Thank you. Takes the form of town.
Next up to the podium to talk about the Portland Police Bureau's response to last night's protests is Deputy Chief Chris Davis.
Well, good morning. I'm Deputy Chief Chris Davis with the Portland Police Bureau. Last night was the third night of large-scale protests that we saw in our city, and it was also the third night in which we saw acts of criminal activity and violence following those protests. Yesterday we saw people at their very worst, and we saw people at their very best. The day actually started off with a pretty remarkable moment between police officers and demonstrators, where after a conversation on a fairly tense moment on a line of officers and a group of demonstrators, the sergeants had a conversation with some people in the crowd, and everybody agreed that they would all take a knee together as a sign of community and a sign of solidarity. And that was a very deeply impactful moment. Later, as more people began to gather downtown, a separate large crowd began forming in Laurelhurst Park. This group eventually moved to the area around the former Southeast Precinct at 47th and Burnside. Thousands of people surrounded that building, and they remained peaceful. As the crowd swelled, demonstration liaison officers reached out to leaders to offer assistance to help facilitate this very large group's movement and to keep participants safe. The crowd began to march towards downtown Portland, and we decided to allow this despite them being in the street due to the crowd's large size and the fact that the crowd was still peaceful in nature. We also allowed this to continue despite going past the curfew order, again because of the large size and because of the fact that it was still a peaceful group. So we used some discretion in that decision. This crowd eventually came downtown and joined with another crowd that was already in front of the Justice Center. Our officers advised the crowd that they would set the tone for the evening. Our strategy last night was to make sure that whatever happened, that the Police Bureau was not the cause. And so we decided to give demonstrators space and give them the time to express themselves. At one point, we had demonstrators who got on the scaffolding surrounding the federal courthouse. There was a report of broken glass. There at one point was a report which we later determined not to be the case, that the building had been entered. And then we were able to de-escalate things for a while, but then shortly after that, protesters began throwing projectiles at police officers, and this escalated to the point where our officers had large industrial-grade mortar-type fireworks fired at them and a very large number of projectiles. We declared an unlawful assembly and eventually a civil disturbance, and demonstrators were told to leave. Following the dispersal, small groups continued to move around downtown and damage property, set fires, and throw projectiles at officers, and this went on for several hours. This morning, again, we come downtown to find the city marred by destruction and vandalism, but I am happy to report that we have experienced no major injuries last night. I know emotions are running high, and I want to thank all of the people who demonstrated peacefully last night, which was the vast majority of the crowd that came downtown. We did everything that we could to help facilitate their march and their ability to demonstrate. I can assure you that we hear you and that we hear the community and that the community at large hears you. Last night, Chief Resch had the opportunity to meet with 3 people who came forward from the demonstration and asked to meet with her. They had a very productive meeting, and one of the things that they asked us to do was to message to the community that violence was not their intention. And they tried to help get people to leave because they could see, like we could, the direction that a small group in this crowd was trying to take it. We acknowledge the pain and the uncertainty of life that we're all living in right now during the pandemic and now recent events. And we acknowledge the pain in our communities of color that we have to just recognize that our profession over its history has a role in. We've worked very hard in this city and in our organization to change that, and we will continue to do so. And whatever protest events we have, whether they're peaceful or if we have situations that turn into violence, I want you to know, and Chief Resch wanted me to make sure everyone knows that we remain committed to the change that we need to make. And as the Police Bureau, we remain committed to serving all Portlanders with the best possible public safety service we can. Once again, I'd like to thank all of our partners in public safety agencies, including police and fire and sheriff's agencies from around the state that came to help us. There's too many of them for me to name here today. And going forward, I continue to urge those of you who are demonstrating to do so peacefully. This is your home. This is our home. Help us protect our shared community from more violence and destruction, and help us move our community in a positive direction. Thank you.
The next speaker is Multnomah County Sheriff Mike Reese. Mike.
Good morning. As a public safety professional, I swore an oath to protect and to serve our community. I stand with the family of George Floyd and with all those who are grieving and seek justice and healing. As public safety professionals and representatives of the communities that we serve, it's important that we understand the impact that racially motivated policing has on communities of color and marginalized populations. At the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, we have no tolerance for disparate treatment. The actions of some in the crowds last night to engage in looting, property damage, and violence needlessly takes away from our community's ability to heal and move forward. As public safety professionals, we cannot turn away from criminal activity in our cities. As an agency and personally as an individual, we decry violence and destruction to divert attention from the suffering that's going on and the rightful calls for justice. The destruction in our community must stop. I want to take a moment to highlight some of the concerns I have about what transpired last night and the focus on, continued focus on the Justice Center. It probably is because it's perceived as just a police facility, but it's much more. It houses adults in custody who we are legally and morally responsible for their safety and their security. It's where during a pandemic, we are having victims of domestic violence come for restraining orders. It's where we have arraignment courts and a lot of our other court processes that allow us to release people from custody and for victims to seek justice. I am committed to fighting racism and bigotry in our community and will continue fighting for the underserved and the silent to reduce crime and build a community that we all want and that we all strive for. I want to close by saying that we're all responsible for public safety, not just the police, not just our deputy sheriffs. Last night's events were tumultuous. I was personally present when our deputy sheriffs and our state police and our Portland police officers came under fire with projectiles, rocks, glass bottles, incendiary devices, and other items that were thrown at them. And they acted with restraint in trying to keep the peace and restore order. It was incredibly violent last night in front of the Justice Center at times. And again, I cannot highlight the good work that was done by Chief Resch and the leadership of the Portland Police Bureau to attempt to contain the violence and to restore order and peace in our community. We need your help. There are folks that we put out yesterday photos of who are responsible for Friday night's damage at the Justice Center, the arson, and the damage that occurred. And those photographs, I'm sure, will help us hold people accountable for those activities. If you know someone that was responsible, I'm asking you to please come forward and let us know who that person is so that we can seek justice and stop this violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff Reese. And our last speaker is Billy Williams, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Oregon.
Good morning, everyone. Let me start by echoing what you've heard from Mayor Wheeler and Chief Davis and Sheriff Reese. No one discounts the trauma and the history of racial intimidation and violence that's been inflicted on communities of color throughout this country for our history in this country. What happened to Mr. Floyd is inexcusable, it's criminal, and it's being prosecuted. And so let me recognize the anger and the frustration with the criminal justice system that has been expressed through the protests over the last few days nationally. But let me also mention the words that I heard of Mr. Floyd's brother in an interview this morning as I was coming into work, and that he is asking for peace. His brother would be asking for peace. The violence and vandalism and senseless acts that are criminal is not reflective of the purpose of those who are protesting for justice. So beyond that, with what happened across the United States the last 3 nights, and in particular here in Oregon, is criminal. It just can't be accepted as normal. It has elevated to an organized level across the United States from what we are all gathering in terms of the information. It's just different. It's like a light switch going off at some point, and similar conduct is going on throughout the United States. That puts our first responders, our men and women in law enforcement, in harm's way. Private property owners, businesses, why are they being subjected to this kind of senseless violence and destruction? What I saw at the Justice Center and the Hatfield Courthouse this morning is sickening. This has to stop. And in order for that to happen in the city of Portland, we need help. We need more help in terms of resources for law enforcement. And I'm asking the governor of Oregon to activate the National Guard. Yesterday, there was an allowance, as I understand it, of materials that can be used by law enforcement that was allowed, that's part of the materials resourced by the National Guard. But I'm asking for personnel assistance for activation of National Guard to be ordered as it has been in 22 other states as of this morning, and the District of Columbia. We need leadership. We need action now. This can't go on. So that's my ask this morning. Mayor Wheeler needs help. Chief Resch and Chief Davis need help. Sheriff Reese needs help. The men and women of law enforcement from multi-agencies around the metropolitan area and from the Oregon State Police. Everyone is doing their best, but we need bodies. We need more numbers to do something to stop this ridiculous violence. This just cannot keep up. So it's time to work with our community leaders, throughout the metropolitan area, throughout the state of Oregon, like we have done for years. We have wonderful partnerships. We have community engagement. We build bridges. This is burning, right? So it's time to stop the nonsense. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Attorney Williams. We'll now open up the floor for questions, and what I want to ask is that once we bring our first candidate up here, if you have anyone that has any other questions for that speaker, to do that now, so we're not going back and forth with one at a time with different questions. So, first question from the floor, Marilyn.
I'd just like to ask Mr. Williams or Mayor Wheeler if they don't think that activating the National Guard might just make things worse.
Okay, the question is to Mayor Wheeler and U.S. Attorney Williams. Do they think activating the National Guard might make things worse?
That's a good question. I think that's always an issue, a potential. But at some point, you have to do the right thing. And right now, our law enforcement partners are in desperate harm's way. And again, private businesses, public entities, city buildings, county buildings, federal buildings. At what point do you make the decision that you're going to do everything you can do to stop the violence? We can have the support of people who are legitimately and lawfully and caringly protesting. They don't want this. That's been communicated to me. They don't want this. So is there a risk, I suppose? Yeah, there's a risk every day in many things that we do, and sometimes you just have to accept it and act in a way that where you draw a line in the sand and you say you're going to do everything you can do to support law enforcement. That line's here. It's been crossed. It's time.
Yeah, first of all, I want to be very clear that there are open lines of communications between myself and the governor personally, as well as between our offices. There is coordination with the superintendent of state police, as well as the leadership of the National Guard. I spoke to the governor 3 or 4 times yesterday. I did make the request on all 3 of those occasions for support from the National Guard. The governor had alternative strategies that she suggested, including deploying more state police resources. We subsequently asked for additional tools that could be used in the field. That was agreed to by the governor and supported. Based on last night, however, I agree with what the U.S. Attorney has said, and I agree with what my colleagues in the Portland Police Bureau have just confirmed with me, which is we do need more resources, more people, more personnel. And I want to be very clear to those who may serve in the National Guard. I respect the difference of the mission of the National Guard versus local law enforcement, and I want to assure folks that if the National Guard is deployed in Portland, they will be deployed for the purpose of securing and protecting facilities. That in turn would free up our local law enforcement, who is trained in crowd management, to be deployed throughout the community and address issues related to activity in the community. So we would not be calling for a widespread deployment of the National Guard throughout the community. They might, for example, be posted at the Justice Center and given the task of standing there. They would also be supported by local law enforcement officials who are appropriately trained for the types of circumstances. I also want to say something that people don't necessarily think about. The National Guard are citizen soldiers. They're from the community. They live here. They raise their family. They have their families here. Their kids go to our schools. They have the same demeanor as other people who live in this community would. They're not coming from the outside. They are not people who do not know our community. They are not people who do not understand the sensitivity of the issue. So I just want to make that very clear as well. I'm going to defer that question to the individuals who are responsible for the National Guard. I know they are armed differently. I'm going to actually defer to law enforcement. I think they know. Chris, can you answer that question?
So that's a combination of a couple of things. What we would do with National Guard assets is we would give them the mission that we want done. The mission that we have in mind for them right now does not involve necessarily having lethal weapons. So what we're looking for, and without going too much into the tactics and planning for securing critical infrastructure, we would be looking for their assistance really with guarding critical infrastructure, which would involve some protective equipment. But I also am not in a position to tell the National Guard how to come accomplish the mission that I've asked them to do. We've been in conversation about that, but that will be a combination of whatever mission we ask of them and then their own prerogative in terms of equipment that they bring to accomplish that mission. But what we're not looking for is being out in the community doing crowd management and facilitation and, where necessary, crowd control operations.
Chief, have you come to the conclusion that a lot of the problems are coming from people who don't live in Portland? Is that the case?
It's a little too early to tell. We have made a large number of arrests, but that number of arrests is a small fraction of the people who've been involved in criminal activity. And, one of the realities of living in a large metro area is that people come and go from cities where they don't live all the time. So it's much too early in the investigation to tell the distribution of where people are from who are engaged in criminal activity.
Do you still support a curfew if you're not going to really enforce a curfew?
We do support a curfew. As I said earlier, we've used discretion in the enforcement of that curfew because, for example, if we have a crowd of 3,000 people marching down the street, no law enforcement agency has the resources to arrest 3,000 people. It's the same discretion that we use in law enforcement all the time.
And I have a question for Mr. Williams again. You mentioned that you had some kind of information about some of this looting and rioting being organized. Can you talk more about that?
Good question. I'm not going to talk about the details that are involved in investigations, but I would also note this is common knowledge being discussed nationally. The 3 radio stations I listened to driving in this morning, everyone's talking about it. So in my mind, there's no question that there are organized efforts. Identifying the sources of those is a process we're engaged in. It's going to happen, but this is different. Those aren't my words. Those are words coming from across the country. It's different here in Portland.
What do you mean by that?
Well, just in terms of at some point during each protest in individual cities, law enforcement has noticed a more organized effort as at some point during the evenings that protesters fan out and engage in the same kind of criminal conduct. People have been noticed, in effect, organizing those endeavors. And that's all I'm going to say about it.
But have you seen that here in Portland?
Yes.
Do you expect a curfew in effect tonight?
Any other questions you want to? The question is, do we expect to put a curfew in tonight? I'll bring Mayor Wheeler up here.
So with regard to the question of the curfew, as of last night, 40 cities across the United States imposed curfews. I want to be clear that I'm not stupid. I realize that when you impose a curfew, that does not necessarily, in and of itself, cause anybody to make the decision not to come and participate in a protest or a demonstration. I will even acknowledge that in some cases, it might encourage some people to come. So why do this? Why actually extend the curfew? Two reasons. Number one, it sends a clear message to the broader community that in the middle of a large demonstration, that is not the time to come downtown and looky-loo. And we saw a lot of traffic coming into the city, in particular on Friday and Saturday nights. ODOT worked with us to close some of the on-ramps into the city of Portland last night to prevent some of that from people from the outside coming in. But we saw a lot of traffic right in the middle of the demonstration last night, including one very tense moment where, at least according to some of the demonstrators, they believed a pickup truck was attempting to drive through the crowd. I don't know factually if that is accurate. I don't know the details. But there are those kinds of potential flashpoints that we are trying to avoid. So number one, we're sending a broad message to the community that this is a tense situation. We really want people to stay away. And related to that, I want to remind people that we are still in a stay-at-home order as a result of the global pandemic that we should not lose sight of. We are still in the middle of a public health crisis. And so that is the related reason. And I would say one other reason is, as Deputy Chief Davis indicated, while the curfew itself may not dissuade people who are determined to participate from participating, it does give the Police Bureau added flexibility and added legal options in terms of helping to manage the demonstration should it turn violent. And so that, for that reason, we will be extending the curfew tonight. I know in a number of cities, they've issued blanket orders to extend throughout the entire week. I still, at this moment, based on what I know as of right now, would prefer to make this decision on a day-by-day basis. But the curfew will be in effect tonight.
When will we see the National Guard again?
I'm sorry?
When would we see the National Guard again?
Well, that would be a decision made by the head of the National Guard and the governor. Ultimately, the National Guard reports to the governor.
Has she called them, do you know?
I don't know.
So, Mayor, you had said that damage could be in the millions. Do you have an updated estimate? And where is most of it? Is it all downtown, or is it spread across the city?
The damage is predominantly in the downtown core. Of course, on Friday night, there was significant damage in Northeast Portland down the MLK corridor. There has been some minor damage in the neighborhoods, tagging and the like. In terms of the estimates, those are being compiled by the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management. I've not yet seen those estimates. I don't know where they are in terms of collecting. I don't know if anybody here I don't have that information at this point, but I know that the city is gathering that data through the Office of Emergency Management. Thank you.
Are there any questions for any of the other panelists up here before we wrap things up? Okay, well, that will do it for today. If anybody needs anything more from me and Mayor Wheeler's office, feel free to reach out to me at any time, and that will wrap up today's press conference. Thank you.